In the words of a virtual Seder in the time of COVID, it would have been enough that we were safe in our homes, but we also found this beautiful new way to connect. As we get closer to Passover, some of you may be creating virtual Seder celebrations of your own, or coming together with the people under your roof for good food and good company. So today, we're going to talk about Passover and see how these ancient traditions can help us navigate this new world that we find ourselves in. To start with, let's skip ahead in the Passover story to the climax, and not just because it features some plagues. So, backstory. Moses, our protagonist, the hero of this story, is a Jewish city boy from Egypt who was raised by the Pharaoh's family and, inexplicably, ends up herding goats in some tiny nomad village. Now, God comes to him and tells him to go back to the capital and tell Pharaoh to free the Jewish people from enslavement. So, Moses goes to Pharaoh and tells him the famous line, "Let my people go." And Pharaoh pretty much laughs in his face. Pharaoh, to paraphrase, says, "Not a chance. Who are you to even ask?" Then we get to perhaps the most confusing part of this story. It's not the burning bush, surprisingly. In Torah, it says, God hardened Pharaoh's heart. Then God hardened Pharaoh's heart. Let's put a pin in that for the moment. We'll come back to it. So here and now, we've been told by our president that we need to leave our houses, rush to the pews, and celebrate Easter in every church in this country. This is despite what the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, is saying. Despite what healthcare workers, doctors, nurses, everyone is urging us to do, which is to stay at home. President Trump has told us that in order to save the economy, we must risk our lives and the lives of our loved ones. All right, let's go back to Pharaoh and this intriguing and confusing part of the story where God hardens Pharaoh's heart. Now, let's remember, this is the same God who just recently told Moses to go and talk to Pharaoh and tell him to let the Jewish people go. Same God. This God hardens Pharaoh's heart. Well, that makes no sense, so let's unpack it. Pharaoh is a man who rules Egypt, but Pharaoh is also the center of an institution, the Egyptian government, which enslaves the Jewish people in order for them to make blocks and build monuments to the Egyptian state. Pharaoh hears the words of Moses, the words that God told Moses to use, and he reacts to it as the leader of a huge institution that depends on the Jewish people's labor for the functioning of Egypt's economy. Sound familiar? So when the story tells us that God hardened the Pharaoh's heart, it could be referring to the Pharaoh's reaction to the words of God shared through the lips of city boy Moses, who would really rather be herding goats. Pharaoh reacts as the leader of the Egyptian economy and tells Moses, "No way! The Jewish people can't go free. Where would I get my blocks?" Today, President Trump is using God as an excuse to get people to keep contributing to the economy. If we continue to shelter in place, then where will the stock market get its blocks? Just as Pharaoh uses the idea of God to harden his heart and put the Egyptian economy over the welfare of the Jewish people, our president is doing the same. So what can we do? What can we do to free ourselves from the president's idea of an economy that relies on us to risk our lives? Well, number one, stay at home. We will not be filling the pews this Easter because our empty pews will fill this country with hope for a flattened curve. We will stay home and be together virtually, even in our physical separation. The second thing we can do is take a lesson from Moses, our city boy goat herder. Moses is a hard-working person who tends his goats so that his community can have food. When he is asked to leave his goats and go tend to his community in a different way, by advocating with Pharaoh, he does that too. Today we are learning who the essential workers in this society really are. It is not only the healthcare workers who keep us safe and keep us alive in our hospitals, but also the food care workers who are keeping us alive in our homes. Food workers have some of the least regarded jobs in this country. From the extremely underpaid, often migrant workers picking our crops in the fields, to the still underpaid grocery store clerks and delivery people who are risking their lives to make sure that those of us who are staying at home have food. We can make a difference by valuing these essential workers. So next time you order a delivery, tip big. A $20 tip can go a long way. Right now, Amazon, Whole Foods, and Instacart workers are striking for hazard pay and also for cleaner facilities so that the virus cannot spread. Let us do our best to support them by not crossing the metaphorical picket lines if we can help it. So if you can use a different food delivery service right now, try that. And if you can't use a different delivery service, then please tip your workers, because they're having a really hard time, and they're trying to keep us alive. In the Passover story, the Jews must leave Egypt so quickly that the bread does not have time to rise. This is why we eat matzah, an unleavened bread, to remember their flight from Egypt. The women of this story are given few mentions, and this is one of the ways that they contribute, by making the matzah. Let's remember them, and remember all the workers who are making our bread and our toilet paper and delivering it to us faster than the bread took to rise. Passover is a story of hope, a story of a community that bravely goes against the words of the institutional religion, the economy, in order to be free. We are currently courageously going against the words of the leader of our economy, the President of the United States, in order to stay alive and support all of those who are working to keep us alive in this country, from the food workers to the healthcare professionals to the teachers distributing food from the back of school buses. Let us rejoice in the courage of our community. Let us rejoice in the empty pews on Easter this year. Let us rejoice that food workers and delivery people are advocating for themselves in this difficult time. The story of Passover can be summed up in this old Yiddish phrase: "They tried to kill us, we survived, let's eat." So, let's remember that someday we'll be able to say, "They tried to force us to risk our lives. We survived. Let's eat."